Welcome to 2022. We made it. I hope everybody had a good holiday and is raring to go on public safety. And I see we have some new faces out here. This is good. Mona Lita is with us. Mona Lita is our new director for the Community Justice Center. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mona Lita?
I think you just did a pretty good job, but that's okay. I'm going by Mona, which is perfectly fine. Mona or Mona. It's up to you guys. I'll accept either. I'm happy to be here. I'm the new Community Justice Center project director. I've met individually with some of you just to do a connection, a meet and greet. I appreciate you taking the time to do that with me, and I'm eager to get this plan rolling and get started.
Okay. Let's see. And I just want to check. We have quorum. Let's see. I see Henry, Mike. So we do have quorum. Who else is on public safety? Shauna, help me.
I am for this month.
Oh, okay. Well, special guest star then. What's going to happen at the end of the month?
I'll turn into a pumpkin. No. You will be joined by Sigler, Randy Brown. Oh, nope, that's wrong. Sigler, Henry, yourself, and then Veronica Pillar, and one other person.
Travis. Okay.
Travis.
So,
That's right.
so Travis and yeah, Veronica are not here. Okay. Do you know if they're attending today or were they not able to make this meeting?
I believe Travis actually said that he was not able to.
Oh, okay. I missed that. All right. Well, hopefully Veronica joins us soon. Okay. Why don't we get going? Let's see. Is there any public comment? Brittany, is there anybody who wanted to speak with us?
Okay, it's Katrina. I'm here in Chambers and
Katrina.
I haven't heard from anybody.
Okay, I apologize. You're really tiny on my screen. So, okay.
That's okay.
And thank you for helping us today. All right, if there's no public comment, I believe we might have an addition to the agenda. Is there another resolution to consider?
There was one authorized to accept the Division of Criminal Justice LiveScan Grant 2022 from the Sheriff's Office. Did everybody receive a copy of that?
Did everybody get that?
I don't think so.
Okay, I can go ahead and email it out to everybody right now.
Okay. And in the meantime, the Sheriff's Department got a grant. Jennifer's going to speak to it on the Sheriff's report, but I'd like to add it to the agenda for consideration. Could I get a motion on that? Shauna moves. Henry seconds. Thank you. Any discussion? Call the vote. Shauna?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Mike? Mike, are you there?
I'm here, sorry.
I think that was a yes through the filter, and the chair votes
Yep.
yes. Okay, so that's unanimous. We'll add that to the agenda and look for it in your email. And then we have minutes from December 16th, 2021. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes? Shauna moves, Henry seconds. Any questions, comments on the minutes? I'll call the roll.
I have a point of order, Rich, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I officially on the committee now, or does that changeover happen February 1st?
I believe you're
I'm more
on.
than happy to be a voting member.
I thought you were on the committee before and after.
Oh, Rich, I know that you think I'm everywhere, but no, I was not actually on your committee. I just came along.
Right. You just joined.
Rich, we have Lee Shirtliff here now. He's replacing Glenn through the end of the month.
Oh, okay. All right.
So he would be fourth member.
So the chair admits to total confusion here. And I will, let's revote on adding that resolution to the agenda. Since that interloper, Mike Sigler, jumped in and voted. All my fault, Mike. But let's call that vote again. This is to add the resolution to the agenda. Shauna,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, and then the minutes. Shauna,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay. And let's see, we do have some advisory board opinion. Jerome Mayorsak to the advisory board on indigent representation, pardon me. Could I get a motion to accept that application?
So
Shauna
moved.
moves, Henry seconds. Right, any questions, comments? Shauna,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay. And I see we're up to chair's report, but I'd like to go through the other reports before we get there. Why don't we go to county administration? And I see Lisa's with us and Deanna. Yeah, Lisa?
Sure. I can kick us off. Just to make the committee aware, because I know you're going to start talking about your 2021 goals and 2022. Department heads are in the process of submitting their 2022 goals this month, and we'll be sharing with the administration, and we'll share them out with committees for review at the February meeting. Public safety is one of those committees where there are several departmental goals that may straddle multiple committees, including reimagining public safety with HHS and the capital projects that we have going on with the public safety building and with the backup dispatch center. The F&I is also quite interested in. So just something for the committee to consider as we get into these discussions, but more on that later. And I'd be happy to turn it over to Deanna Carithers. Today's her birthday, by the way. To turn it over to Deanna for a reimagining public safety report. Happy birthday,
Okay.
Deanna.
Welcome, Deanna, and happy birthday.
Lisa, I know where you work. so thank you for the kind words. Well, it's exciting time to have Mona here with us for the first time. I would like to yield the time just for having her have more time to kind of talk about what she's been doing over the last week or so. Mona's done a tremendous job of meeting people thus far, and it's a great addition to the team. Just a couple of quick high-level highlights in terms of the work in terms of criminal justice system. We're meeting with CJATI next week to review the goals from last year and identify goals for the coming year. And many of you folks who are on here are already members of CJATI, and you'll be in that meeting as well. So I look forward to your continued contribution in that space. The city of Ithaca is getting close to completing their report for the redesign of the City of Ithaca Police Department. I say that as a separate context of the CJC. Again, the county did not vote on that particular recommendation. However, we have kept dispatch in terms of Mike Sigler and the team involved, so they're aware of that work, but that report will be coming soon. In addition to that, we have done some significant work in terms of the healing plan and some of the other plans. And so we will have the next report for you coming up in the next couple of weeks. And so I'll turn it over to Mona if you want to talk about some of the conversations you've had over the last week. And again, we're so thankful to have you here.
Well, thank you. Some of the conversations that I've had have just been with the different municipalities, with Trumansburg, mayor and the chief of police out there, and what their vision is or what they would like to be included in as part of the plan. I've met with Matt Van Houten at the district attorney's office, Michael Sitley. I've been up and met with Jen and both Derek at the sheriff's department, and just getting information. I'm just gathering information on how these different departments would like to be involved in this process. And then, like Deanna said, working on the community healing plan. So that's a big one for us right now, because that's going to hopefully be rolling out in the beginning of February. And just doing a lot of reading, catch up. There's been a lot of work done on, this whole entire project. So my week and a half has been a lot of reading and just catching up with where the different committees are at and meeting with lots and lots of people. And everybody has been really, really super welcoming, and I appreciate that.
Okay. All right.
Just for, if I could just for a brief context around that conversation with Criminal Drug, Ann Corman had asked, that's her area, had asked for a meeting between us and the mayor and the police chief there, and just asked for an update. And so one of the things we'll be talking to you about, Rich, and some other folks, is bringing all the towns and villages together for just a comprehensive update around reimagining. So, and also getting a sense of what their plans are. That meeting just occurred yesterday, so we're not breaking news, but we also wanted you to be apprised of what is happening. That's within the context of the entire county. So we'll be reaching out to other areas as well, and looking forward to what we learned there. Also looking for opportunities for partnership in that relationship, whether it's training, looking at the alternative response, looking at standardization of data. We know that these systems are not, they don't happen in a vacuum. And so just want to reach out again in those ways. So thank you.
Well, that's really good to hear. I think that's a very positive step. So good. Any questions or comments for county administration? Anybody? All right. Thank you for your report. Up next is the sheriff. And Jen, I think you're representing the sheriff's department today.
Yep, thank you. Derek's
Welcome.
at the Winter Sheriff's Conference, so he was unable to attend. Just give you a few brief updates that weren't in the report, and then I could take any questions that you have. The CAP program started the 3rd of January. Since that date, we've had 9 arraignments, 3 for the state police, 5 for the sheriff's office, and 1 for Cuba Heights. Of those 9, 2 were remanded and 7 were released. So far, we've just identified, a few little hiccups here or there, nothing major, but it seems to be going really well. We try to touch it base with the judges here or there, and it seems to be going well on their end as well.
If I could just interrupt for new members, this is the centralized arraignment part, which is a new program in the county. It's been implemented in other parts of New York State, but it's new here, where somebody, when they are brought in for arraignment, they are not brought to a separate town court. They're all brought to the sheriff's office and arraigned at a set time of day. I believe it's 8 in the morning and 8 at night. And the judges rotate to sit on the bench. We got a grant from New York State to help with modification of the facilities, and it's now up and running. And so that was what Jennifer was reporting on.
And so far, it seems like half of the arraignments are happening in the morning and half are in the evening. It's a pretty even balance from what I can tell. And that kind of ties into the live scan grant, the resolution that was just added. Our live scan machines are starting to get outdated. It's technology that becomes outdated quite quickly. So we have 1 live scan machine on the road patrol side and 1 in the jail that's used for fingerprint photographs for booking for arrests and or intakes into the jail. We applied through a grant through DCGS and was lucky to be awarded that, nearly $24,000. That grant is only covering half the cost of both of the live scan machines. So we had to budget an additional $24,000 in our 2022 budget to be able to cover both of those machines. One of the small issues we've discovered with CAP is the live scan machine in the jail is a little different than the one in the road. So we've had to make some modifications to allow those bookings to be transferred to the appropriate systems. That way it gets down to the court. The courts are getting the necessary rap sheets that they need. So I believe that grant will help us get the live scan machines aligned so that they're both functioning and doing the same functions.
Do you have the new equipment at this point, or are you getting
No,
it?
we still have to order it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
ours are still functioning. The technology is, starting to fail here or there. So it will happen this year.
Okay. All right. Henry.
Yes, thanks, Jen. Is it just built-in obsolescence, or why did they fail so quickly?
Well, with computers, I mean, it's essentially a computer with additions on it that can take the fingerprint and the photograph. So we all know how outdated computers become so quickly. So it's pretty much just the technology needs to be updated to keep up with the times.
How long do they last?
Usually they'll last 3 to 5 years. It depends on how many updates they send out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Shauna.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer our congratulations on your acceptance into the FBI Academy. That is an incredibly selective process, and we are very proud to send you. So congratulations from
Thank
all
you.
of us.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, likewise as well. I was going to ask you if you could speak to, just tell us a little bit about what that is so that
Sure,
our
absolutely.
vast viewing public can hear.
Yeah, so something I've always prided myself on is just continuing my education. It's something I've kind of always wanted to do. When I became, to get to know Derek a little bit more, he became appointed as his undersheriff. I knew that's something that he had attended, and he spoke really highly about it, and he really wanted me to attend to when it became the right time. And we've been talking about it for the last 3 years. We kind of decided this would be the right time. I got the approval from my wife that I could leave and she could handle the house for 2 months. So I applied, and I have been meeting with the local FBI agent, did some interviews, and I was fortunate to be selected. So I'm really excited about that. So for those 2 months, you pretty much essentially take 17 college courses, either graduate or undergraduate, whatever you choose, and a variety of different topics right at Quantico, Virginia, at the FBI Academy there. And it's just a range of topics. They bring people in worldwide, law enforcement executives, not just from the United States, but all over the world, and you kind of learn from each other. So I'm super excited.
And that's in May?
I would leave April 4th, and it's till June 9th.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
I guess we'll see you before you go in any event. So,
Yes.
Good news. Are there any questions about the sheriff's report? Anything? I see there was a very nice commendation of, is it Deputy Manuel?
Yes.
Yeah, good job. Good job there.
Just one other thing I wanted to mention before we move on is just I've been working with Lisa on an MOA with the Deputy Sheriff's Union in regarding stop DWI overtime, specifically what was referred to as crackdown events previously. Now they're titled high visibility engagement campaigns. One of my roles I play is the stop DWI coordinator for the county. Annually, we usually get a grant of around $15,000, and we only end up spending between 4 and 6. That's not just for the sheriff's office. That $15,000 is distributed through all the law enforcement agencies in the county. And we're not, it's not unique to Tompkins County. This is happening all over the county. We're having a hard time staffing those special details. There's a significant amount of just shift overtime. People are kind of losing interest in the proactive events. So they encourage us to be kind of inventive in the ways we could incentivize these details. So working with Lisa and the Deputy Sheriff's Union, we were able to come up with an MOU where the deputies would receive their overtime rate would be 2 times their hourly salary instead of the 1.5 times to try to incentivize these details. That money is being paid specifically out of grant funding. It's not county funding. It wouldn't be from the taxpayers. It would just be out of the grant funding. And it would only continue if we continue to have the same amount of grant funding. And it's just specifically for those holiday times that are identified by the STOP program.
Okay. Any questions about that matter? Good. All right. And I see Randy Brown is with us, and I apologize again that with the carryover, Randy will be voting today, but I just ask that we pick up from here. And just in time for the added resolution, this is the authorization to accept the Division of Criminal Justice Live Scan Grant 2022, ID 10659. And could I get that moved? You should all have it in your email. Shauna moves, Lee seconds. All right. And I believe you've spoken to the resolution, Jennifer, is there anything else you want to add?
Nope.
Any questions or comments on the resolution? Are we ready to vote? Okay, Shauna,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
and now, oh, there's Randy. Randy,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So that's unanimous. That's good news. Okay, and let's see, moving on, we're at the district attorney. Welcome, Matt. How are you?
Thanks, Rich. I'm good. How are you?
Just fine.
So I think one of my goals for 2022 is to see some significant progress with a public safety dashboard that will provide data to the community and a greater level of transparency with what's going on with the criminal justice system. I know that Deanna has been working hard on this and just saw an email come in from Measures for Justice today. That's an organization that has been putting out this kind of data and compiling it and filtering and organizing it in other jurisdictions. They had a questionnaire that I filled out a couple of weeks ago now as far as what kind of data we have, how we collect it, what we don't collect, things like that, that I think is the first step in moving forward towards working with them to put together this dashboard. I think that's something I hope to see significant progress on in this year coming. Other than that, we finished a big trial last week that was about a 10-day trial for a serious sex offense felony charge. We have another one starting February 14th and then one February 24th. And then in March, we just keep having trials and grand jury. So it's been busy, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to collaborate with the federal authorities with some of the gun violence cases that have been happening. So that has also been a help in this busy last 6 months.
How is the grand jury process working with COVID? I assume you're able to manage it, but I would suspect it presents logistic issues.
It does. We used to have grand jury on the second floor of the county courthouse in a very small room that had a hodgepodge of all the rejected chairs from county offices across the county. That room was vastly too small for a safe environment for grand jury to have 23 people in the same room, plus a witness and a court reporter and a prosecutor. So we have moved, last year we moved grand jury proceedings to the annex of the Office of the Aging building on West State Street. There's a big open space there that we have, we put 23 chairs that are spaced out 6 feet apart from each other. Facilities, Larry Sprague and Facilities built this beautiful booth that has 3 sides of plexiglass on it. So the witness can sit in that booth, take their mask off, and be able to testify and have the jurors see their whole face. We screen the jurors every week, take their temperature, everybody wears masks. It's as safe a process as we can make it. And this has been working for probably almost a year.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions or comments for the district attorney? All right, seeing none, we have Department of Emergency Response. Michael Steitley is with us and Jessica Verfus. Welcome.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it. Just a couple of things that aren't in the report that I would like to highlight. However, we did make some significant progress in our backup center project. And in the report, I have provided floor plans, not only for the backup center, but also the renovations to our current 911 center once the backup center is complete. We also hit a pretty significant milestone right at the end of the year with the help of our county legal team and signing a contract with our motor roller partner. And the reason that's significant is because pretty much everything that we're going to do, not only at the backup center, but also in the renovations here and also the radio redundancy project, that's part of this, it all hinged on that contract. So we're really very excited to have done that. So I did highlight that in the report. And if anybody's curious as to what the backup center will look like and what the renovations will look like after it's completed here, again, I did include that in the report. Henry, you'd asked me a couple months ago about text to 911, and I did say that that was part of the backup center project, and I wanted to confirm that it is indeed, and one of the new modules that we're going to be purchasing for our dispatch center will have that technology built into it. So I just wanted you to know that I have not lost sight of that, and that is going to be included. Thank you.
And I believe you have a resolution. It's on page 15 of the agenda. This is
That's
to
correct.
accept a grant from United Way to the Department of Emergency Response and in support of the ES chat system for emergency responder communications, ID 10651. Randy, are you raising your hand to move that, or did you have a question?
I actually had a question for Michael. I was, and maybe he just answered it with Henry. One of the fire departments talked to me about getting the emergency response system. It works pretty well, except they're in the hills, and the radios they carry don't get the calls. So with the texting you're talking about, would that address that? So there'd be additional call via text or to the
That
phone?
would be something different. So what I'd like to know, if you could please put those individuals in contact with me, because there should be no gaps with regards to radio communication in the county. So every now and then we can have a technology issue that can create that gap. So if we could identify that sooner than later, that would be great, because we just want to make sure if we ever had an event in the county that our emergency responders can talk to us and talk to one another over the radio.
Okay, it was the fire chief and another member of the Enfield Fire Department. So I'll let him know.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Could we get the resolution on the floor, and then Lee, I'll take your question because would you mind moving it, Lee? You're on mute.
I'll move it.
Thank you. Could I get a second?
A second.
Randy seconds. Thank you. Go ahead, Lee.
Just a question for Michael. Does this tie into the logging recorder system?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. So this will be all tied in, and actually the technology has now become so advanced, even when they initially talked about it last year, that people will be able to send us photos and videos too of a scene. So when they call 911 or if they text 911, the same technology will allow us to capture that, and that will all be archived as well.
So you've got one more search mechanism for your staff to go through when they're looking for recordings and so on. That's
correct. Yep. And I'm sure Matt's office would probably need that information too. As we'll see how it evolves, but yeah, most definitely.
I know that's become a stressor on your office, and something that certainly have to comply with. Every time you add a piece of technology, it's that much more that's evidentiary information and staff dedication of time to. But it sounds like a really good addition to the arsenal you've got there.
No, you're correct on that. In fact, last year we had over 1,000 requests just for audio. That doesn't even count some of the actual discovery requests and some other requests from various partners. So it does. And you're right. This will be something else we'll have to consider. And I think the benefits will certainly outweigh that additional responsibility, just simply because it will just be, I think, a great tool for people to share information with us. But you're spot on. Thank you.
Okay. Henry?
Yes, thank you, Michael. What's the time frame of when that will be available?
It probably won't be available at least until the third quarter, in part because the way the project timeline, which I will be able to update the group with next month. We're just waiting for that information back from Motorola. We're doing it in phases, and that phase probably won't happen at least to the third quarter and probably the latter part of the third quarter, because at that point, we'll hopefully have everything built out at the backup center, and we can actually start adding that front end technology, because everything else in the beginning is going to be all the radio infrastructure to have some redundancy in our tower systems and the actual build out of the physical build out of the center. And I just want to be clear, I'm sorry, you're asking specifically about the text to 911, is that correct?
Right.
That, yes. And we're not anticipating doing anything from a renovation perspective until the first quarter of 2023. And one of the dilemmas that we're faced with right now is just the supply chain shortage has delayed quite a bit of the components that we need. And so because of the timeline that Motorola has really established, and for those people that don't know, pretty much everything that we use in a 911 center is now owned by Motorola. So for example, we use a system called Spillman, that's our CAD system. And the CAD system is the system that we use to record all the calls that we put out for police, fire, and EMS. Well, several years ago, that was a privately owned company, and Motorola now owns it. Same thing with Vesta, which is our phone system. Again, a few years ago, that was privately owned. Motorola now owns it. So they really own this project. And so all these various upgrades that we're going to be doing to our system is really underneath their control. And when they see that it fits most appropriately into the timeline for the project. Now, the upside to that is that we're not working with all these various partners. We're just really working with a singular partner, but they just happen to buy up pretty much everything that we have chosen to use over the years, and they now own it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further on general radio communication? We have the resolution on the floor. Michael, would you like to speak to that resolution briefly? Just explain
Absolutely.
what that's about.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this was actually something that came up last year. And when I say the check got lost in the mail, the check actually got lost in the mail. So it took some time for us to get the check to the county, and we got it last week, and I met with finance and was able to deliver it. But what this program, ES Chat, is going to enable us to do is actually multifaceted. First and foremost, we'll be able to have talk groups that are on our cell phones that will allow us to talk to one another with using push-to-talk technology, as opposed to dialing a number and talking to somebody. So I could actually push the talk, and I could talk to anybody on the group. But what's really most exciting about this, and where I think it might help some of the community-based services, is that we're going to be able to tie in cell phone technology to our radio system. So right now, our 800 megahertz radio system that we use our portable radios on and our mobile radios on will be able to connect to a person's cell phone. So somebody that would like to talk on say police dispatch or EMS dispatch, they'll be able to do that right from their telephones. So it's not something that we're advocating people use to really run, say, like a fire scene per se, but a number of fire departments have had to purchase more radios than they initially requested back when the program was initially rolled out, and maybe they wouldn't necessarily need all those number of radios that they have now. So we're hoping that this does add some relief, provide some relief to our community-based services. But where I really see it enhancing communications of what organizations like the school system and the hospital that are both on our 800 radio systems, and they're talking on private channels. So we don't really have a lot of interface with them on those channels, but they would be able to really save a significant amount of money by not having to purchase a radio, by adding this application on their telephone, because their needs are slightly different than, say, that of a fire chief or another first responder. So we're really very excited about this. And I'd like to thank the Public Safety Committee for adding another $15,000 to this project at the latter part of the year. That's going to allow us to provide additional licenses to members of our emergency services community. And, we're really excited about it. And I'm hoping, maybe not next month, but maybe in the March meeting, we could actually give a demonstration of how it works. But, it could really be a great benefit to the community.
Yes, please, to the demonstration in March. That would be really fun to see. And I would add, if this is successful, and again, it will not replace radios.
That's right.
But for these small fire companies, the cost of a handheld radio is quite a bit. I think it's in the $3,000 to $4,000 range.
That's correct.
And we've heard from several of these departments that they're having real trouble getting the money to buy them. And are looking to the county for help with that. To the extent that ES Chat can supplement those radios and maybe lessen the burden for the overall number of radios that they'll need, I think it's a really positive thing if it works. But we're going to get a chance to see. And I wanted to commend whoever it is out in our community that made the donation. This was anonymous. It went through the United Way, but somebody felt this was important enough to put a substantial amount of money. And I was very happy that as a county legislature, we supplemented it to expand the number of subscriptions. So, yes, Dan.
Hi, thank you, Rich. I had a question for Mr. Stitley. I was just wondering with that ES technology, would that be something that probation officers could use to check in and out of home contacts when they were out in the field as an additional safety measure? Because right now, that would work for them?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're hoping. We're really hoping for somebody outside the box thinking, because typically they don't have portable radios, right, Dan? They're just using their cell phones for that.
That's correct.
Right. So what would be nice about this is rather than being in a position where they'd have to actually dial a number, they would just be able to push it's a button, so to speak, on the phone and have direct radio communication. But the other thing that we could do for your team is when they go out, there's an option where they can actually click on their location. So during working hours, if they were comfortable with it, they could click on that icon, and then you could see on a map where all your folks are at any given moment. And then they could certainly disable that when they weren't working, or if they were using department phones, they could stay on all the time. So that's a benefit. And I think that even with all the discussion with reimagining, I think there's going to be quite an opportunity here. And just to kind of draw upon a recent incident, when we had the situation a few months ago where we had some of the schools on lockdown, when we were given permission by the sheriff and Chief Jolie to take the schools out of lockdown, we literally had to call the schools directly. We called the main office. We're trying to navigate the principals or to the superintendent. With this, because we'll have a group for the schools, we could simply go on there. They'll know that the message is coming directly from us and not from an outside source. And we could tell them all at once that, that the incident commander has given them permission to de-escalate and unlock, and that would make it a lot more efficient. And one last point, if we ever had a search and rescue operation and we had volunteers coming in from other communities and we didn't have enough portable radios to issue those responders coming in, we could on the fly give them access to this system where they now have access to our radio system, be able to communicate with us on the scene. And at the end of the operation, those credentials would expire and then be available for another one. So we're actually going to keep some credentials, some licenses, if you will, open just for that. So there's so much opportunity, and we're really excited to be part of the beta test for this. And frankly, we've already been able to influence some change with the vendor simply because of how much we've already, really started to discuss it. So again, thank you everybody for the support in the program.
Thank you. I would really like to talk more with you about that. I really think it would enhance our safety in the field and be a cost-effective way to do that. So.
Absolutely. I look forward to that conversation, Dan. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the reason we considered it in our budget, Dan, was to make sure that there were sufficient extra subscriptions so that there should be capacity for the probation department to participate.
Without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I can absolutely assure you that there's absolute capacity, and again, in part because of that's that extra support we got from the public safety and the legislature. Thank you.
All right, are we ready to vote? I will call the roll. Shauna,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So we have accepted the grant, and I'm very anxious to hear more on where this goes. Any comments you have on the TompStat report? I looked through that. It looked like the numbers were down a little bit. Is that the case, or?
Some of the numbers down, we did have a 6.8% increase over last year, like total call volume, but there were some areas that did drop. But overall, we actually had more calls this year than we did last year. And some of that also could because, last year it really was an anomaly, so it's really, I think to have a more fair comparison, we'd have to go back one more year, but overall, the numbers continue to go up.
Okay, I tend to look at assaults, disorderly conduct,
Yes.
harassment.
I'm sorry, I thought, yeah, absolutely. There were some areas there that dropped. I'm sorry, sir. I thought you meant the overall.
No, but your point is important as well. Total call volume is up.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, Randy.
Yes, thank you. I know you have 211 now. Did that have any impact on the number of calls coming to 911? I'm just curious if that changed.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, but I will see if I can find an answer. I mean, I've talked with 211. They've been great partners. I don't know though if that's had any impact though.
I've used 211 twice and they were both great both times.
Yeah, they've been great partners to talk with and collaborate with, and I think there's some great opportunity there. But I just don't know if that particular service has had an impact. But I could certainly reach out to them and find out if maybe they've gotten calls that maybe once did come to us that I'm just unaware of.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions or comments? All right, let's keep moving. The Department of Probation and Community Justice. We have Dan and Carla Brackett is with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome to the new legislators and Mona, and welcome back, Lee. Been a while. Happy birthday, Deanne. I can't believe you're 22 already. All jokes aside, we're getting our statistics together for 2021 to prepare our 2021 annual report. We've been busy exploring, referring staff to appropriate trainings that are directed towards our 2022 goals. A lot of those are about enhancing our skill sets around mental health. I've got 2 staff signed up to attend a crisis and hostage negotiation training with the Sheriff's Department. That's a continuation of our partnership with them, and just trying to make an investment in the county's crisis intervention team. I appreciate Jen and Derek allowing us to participate in that. We have 3 staff going to mental health first aid training at the Mental Health Association next week. And so our senior staff team's been working hard. We're developing the new strategy for staff evaluations, trying to make it a more engaging process for our staff, utilize their insights and help encourage their investment and engagement in making some changes to the department. I've been participating in the mental health systems of care training. It's a 5-week, 10 hours of meetings with 61 other participants. It's run by the Racker Center, a broad range of providers from people in the school systems, all the service providers, a lot of consumers of services are also participating and offering their insights into what works with the mental health system for youth and families and what could be done better. I think it's been a great process and we're happy to be part of that. Day reporting, I had to close for a week due to staff quarantines. We didn't have anybody available to run the program, so it was actually closed from the 7th until the 18th. I'm just looking back at my calendar, but we reopened on Tuesday. We're getting good utilization with day reporting and just looking forward to 2022. Hoping to make things look a little bit more like before COVID. So everything's good over here.
Okay. Questions or comments for probation? I did have something, just if I'd point attention to page 27 of the agenda and the monthly summary of jail inmates. Because it's end of year, we have a full year's picture of the admissions to the jail. And you can see on the far right-hand column where those totals are, what really contributes to people entering our jail. And there's, lots of different categories, but I think the highest is violation of probation. And then followed by, or no, I'm sorry, no bail is the highest. Then violation of probation. We're looking at, let's see, parole violations and sanctions from the treatment courts. I thought that was an interesting snapshot of where people are coming from into our jail population. At any rate, I pointed that out. Dan, thank you.
I could speak to that, maybe, Rich?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think the reason that probation violations, and maybe Matt and Lance could also contribute to this, but a lot of times people are given an opportunity to do well on probation, to serve a probation sentence instead of a sentence of incarceration. And despite everyone's best efforts, they just are not willing to engage. And once we've run through our host of available ATIs and offered people numerous opportunities, and they're still demonstrating an unwillingness to be safe in the community, or just continuing to commit additional offenses, we're going to wind up being a contributor to that puzzle, just by the nature of the people that we're trying to help. Some are just
unwilling. By pointing it out, I wasn't making any judgment. And
no, I didn't feel that you were, but I think it's important to point out that we're trying to work with some really difficult clients.
Yes.
Bail reform has resulted in, just changes in the system, and some people that we wouldn't necessarily have worked with in the past, we're now trying to work with, and the system's trying to work with, and hopefully our success rate improves, but there's going to be people who just aren't ready to participate, unfortunately.
No, you make a good point in that our system is set up with so many alternatives to incarceration and so many efforts to try to steer people to different pathways. But there's always going to be a certain amount of the population that need to be in the jail. It's unfortunate, but I don't see that changing. And I wasn't casting aspersions on our probation department as driving the jail population. You're trying to solve the problem.
I didn't feel that way, so I just wanted to be clear.
Okay. Matt.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on what Dan said. Is we really do try to employ the least restrictive means of sentencing or addressing an individual in the system, and sometimes that ends up with us taking a chance with someone on probation that that person has failed in the past on probation or has had limited success on probation. And so we've been challenging the probation department to try to handle those cases, and they're tough cases. And I think the thought is that we want to give people every chance to succeed in the community before any other option is considered. But it does result in sometimes Dan's office having a really difficult client to work with.
Okay, Lee.
Just for my own edification or education, maybe, you make reference to parole violation on both the intakes and the population at the corrections facility, and I see it correlates just the same. The largest number of those inhabiting the Warren Road are parole violators. What's the difference between parole and probation? Do you just use that terminology to characterize the offenses, or is there a distinction there between misdemeanors and felonies that may be committed by those that we're referring to here?
Matt or Dan, do you want to take that?
I can answer it. Or a parole violation is for someone who has been sentenced to a felony sentence involving state incarceration. When they're released, they're either put on post-release supervision or parole supervision. Those are the same or interchangeable terms. And if they commit a new crime, or if they commit a meaningful violation of their parole terms, then they could be reincarcerated in the jail on a parole violation. Those are things that are mostly out of the control of the county, in the sense that the Department of Corrections is a state organization. My office doesn't prosecute parole violations. We don't initiate them. So, when they are in our jail, that's a number that we often don't have any control over. And then parole violations are individuals who are, they could be sentenced to felony probation or misdemeanor probation violation or probation. And those are cases that are supervised by Dan's department, and we do have control over.
So everyone on probation, people on parole are coming out of prison, and parole officers are trying to keep them from going back to prison. We're supervising people who may or may not have been prison eligible, trying to assist them in getting the pieces in place so that they can be less likely to continue to engage in criminal activity, whether that be treatment, housing, employment, things of those sorts.
I would add that this past year, the New York State Legislature passed pretty significant reform of the parole system. And, we really don't yet know how that's going to work. But there were some pretty obvious issues where people on parole were not slotted into our Alternatives to Incarceration programming, which is really unfortunate in that they were in our community, but they were treated in an entirely different system, and often violated on what are called technical violations that aren't actually crimes, or sometimes violated on that basis. There's certainly people on parole violations who committed new crimes, and that's a different matter. But we would be paying the cost for somebody to be in our jail, and we really had no control over that. We will see how the Less is More Act is implemented and what impacts that has. I don't know if anybody has any further comment on that element.
It's Lance, just to follow up and give a little more texture for the new members. We had a fair amount, because we defend the parole violations that come in our department. We used to have a fair number of technical violations of our parole violators. A bunch of those would be technical violations, which tend to be curfew violations. People are struggling with their drug and alcohol treatments, so they're testing positive and so forth. Those should get routed out. And one of the other problems you would see, I think, from the county's perspective, and if Ray Bunce was here, he would fill you in, is one of the problems we have with parole violations. When you're violated, you're remanded on a parole warrant and held in the county jail until there's a parole hearing. We have those once a month in Tompkins County. It's the Department of Parole of Corrections. They have an administrative law judge who floats around this district, which means, if you come in, if you're violated and brought in on the wrong date, and it's not uncommon, it can take a couple months for you to get cleared through the process or more. So they tend to sit here, and I think to great angst for the sheriff's department and everyone else, the county pays for that, and we can't always control the process. So just a little more background on parole violators. But what Matt said is correct. These are all people who have served terms in state prison and are under. And the Department of Parole is a state institution. It's not a county department. And they have their own because of their bosses, it can be hard to get them to respond to our local desires or initiatives. which I think Rich was commenting on.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that, Lance. So anything further for probation, right? And I believe next up on our agenda, Lance Salisbury, the assigned counsel program. Welcome, Lance.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I don't have a lot to report, just a couple quick updates. We've finalized the year 3 budget of our statewide expansion grant, which for the new members is this is a 5-year grant. We get a lot of grant money from the state of New York through the Office of Indigent Legal Services, who oversees mandated representation in the county, that we're able to use for a lot of activities in our program. And so this is, we finalized the year 3 grants, which means it's about $500,000, a little over $500,000 moving forward. Additionally, we'll have to spend on services on that. We can't supplant county costs. These are for additional support activities, but being creative, we can get costs covered. Like a lot of our treatment court costs are covered through these grants instead of the county paying. It's, all of it ourselves, some similar things like that. So we got that. That's another important step for us, to keep maintaining that funds. Just the other FYI, in terms of the governor's budget, it appears like the new governor's carrying forward all of the funding from the past 2 years that they said they would in the criminal justice system, both kind of defense and I think the prosecution. Matt probably knows more about that than I do, but it appears the major funding packages they've been telling us we would get, they're actually continuing to budget for, which is good news.
Very good news. Okay. I had a couple questions, Lance. One
Sure.
is if you had anything further to add about the centralized arraignment part. Are you hearing that's working okay from the assigned counsel perspective?
Yes, it is working well. It always takes, we're only into the second week or so of it, and there haven't been that many yet, as you heard Jen say. So it takes a little bit to get the kinks out, but it seems to be going smoothly for the most part. And I expect as we move forward, it's gonna that'll continue and it'll even improve. I actually did the very first arraignment, and it was a bit of everyone was like, "What are you doing here?" Well, what are you doing here? Kind of thing. We're actually going to do an arraignment. So but it went smoothly. And I know the sheriff's department has got it with the attorneys. Everyone calls into the control room at the jail, and so everything seems to be running smoothly there for the most part. I've heard there are a few problems, which I expect would happen with the judges or with the equipment, learning it and stuff. But so those are the things you expect to kind of work themselves out, going forward.
Okay. And that leads to my second question, which is COVID. Have you had any ongoing impacts with the assigned counsel attorneys?
Not seriously. We've had a few people impacted. I think, other members of the population. Fortunately, there hasn't been anything critical in terms of like, an attorney during a trial or something. It's we've avoided that, and we've been able to provide coverage. I think the judges, the courts are pretty good at making adjustments. So we've had a few hits, but nothing, really critical in terms of impacting our clients, their cases.
Okay.
I think, we're lucky. I think for the most part, probably virtually all of our attorneys are vaccinated and or boosted. So that probably helps.
Okay. And one other thing, while I'm thinking of it, before the holiday, we were, I think, talking about bringing a resolution to honor an attorney who served as an assigned counsel for a really long time and did some very good work over many years. And I'd like to make sure we pick that up again.
We are, and actually what happened is we were putting that in, and the legislative staff talked to us So I talked to Shauna, and it appears the better way to go was actually a proclamation,
Okay.
which will be coming before the full legislature, your next session. So, I appreciate the staff pointing that out to us, that, you may actually prefer to do it this way. And that's,
Yeah, let's proclaim.
it's just for, not to keep all the other members in suspense. Jim Baker, who was a longtime member of the legal community here, retired. He'd stepped in. Unfortunately, both of my predecessors, knock on wood, passed away while they were supervising attorney, and Jim stepped in twice as acting supervisor and kind of made sure assigned counsel operations were ongoing, kind of kept everything running smoothly. He actually drafted the intermunicipal agreement with Sigler County that we have as part of the Hurl Herring thing. He's also, just as an attorney, he's served as kind of a super mentor to the panel attorneys. He was one of those, he's in private practice. One of those attorneys, kind of like Matt did when he was a private attorney, would always, if Julia would call, would agree to take on those tough cases. So, you always appreciate that. So we that's the proclamation you're going to be seeing here shortly.
Yes. Thank you, Lance. Yeah. So a lawyer's lawyer.
Yeah.
Henry.
Yes, Lance, you have a quick update on the billable rates status for assigned counsel?
A little bit. I'm gonna fudge it here. I'll know more next week, and I'll because we're having another meeting. There are two things going on. There's a big push to raise what are called the 18B rates. They haven't been changed since 2004, and they're way out of whack in terms of what's happened with the cost of living and everything else. The kind of the two things going on. The increase is not in. There are bills in the legislature to increase the rates. The governor's budget does not explicitly address, provide for an increase in rates. But I'm told, and this is one of the things I should know more about next week, is in her budget, she has a 15% set aside, and then another $4 billion unallocated. And somewhere in there's this large block of money that the governor has. They have set aside for a purpose. It's either 70 million or 700 million that they're designating for something. And our understanding is that much of that may be for the increase in rates. Part of that is there's also a lawsuit going on down in Manhattan in New York County Court seeking an increase in rates, that it's a violation of the Constitution and the need to provide for mandated representation. And the Attorney General's office apparently is engaging in settlement talks with that, which probably means there's going to be some agreement on there. While that technically only applies to New York County, same thing happened last time. It tends to produce a statewide increase. One of the things we've been focusing on, and we have NISAC and a number of other partners in agreement on, is to make sure that any increase in rates that occurs is covered by the state and not by the county. And that's, one of the issues, trying to get it done legislatively and not rely on that lawsuit, is because that lawsuit will just order an increase in rates. It won't say where it's supposed to come from. And I think the legislators know how Albany loves to kind of pass that on. So one of the fights we're trying to make sure that happens is that it occurs. Any increase there is covered by state money. And it looks like this year they have the money for it. It looks like they may be setting some money aside. The word I've been kind of hearing coming from meetings and so forth is the governor's open to it, but wants the legislature to push it. she doesn't want to be out in front on it. It's one of those things. So that's what I know now, Henry. So,
Well, please
Thank
let
you.
us know if
yeah,
it would
I
be
will.
helpful for us to try to give a push from our direction.
I will. I appreciate that.
Okay. Anything further for assigned counsel?
Nothing from me.
All right.
What-
Thank you, Lance. All right. At this point, I was going to share screen and put up the report from, let's see, I think this is it. The public safety priorities. And I've lost the rest of the view. Hold on. There we go. All right. I'm gonna enlarge full screen. There. Okay. For the new members, and Lisa mentioned that department heads do annual goals. We also do that at the committee level. And at the beginning of the year, we like to do a review of what we set out to do at the beginning of the year and where we succeeded and where we didn't succeed. Typically, you set your priorities and real life intervenes. I don't think I've ever seen a list of priorities fully realized, but we use it to develop a direction to push in. And of course, there's lots of stuff that you don't know is going to arise. I remember 2 years ago, we had pretty ambitious goals, and then this thing, COVID, happened and took us in an entirely different direction. 2021 was a little bit more stable, even though COVID was with us. But I'd like to just run through what we set out to do and entertain a conversation about the different things and start thinking about what goals we want to set for the coming year. And we can talk about that at our February meeting. So bear with me. The first one was provide lobbying support for the proposed New York State less is more legislation. And we actually did this and the legislation passed. Surprisingly, it got through the legislature. This had stalled year after year. And as we discussed earlier in the meeting, it's not clear that the parole reform will do everything we want it to do or that it will be better. But the existing system had really not worked very well. On an average basis, the statistic that sticks with me is that 60% of the people that went out on parole ended up going back to prison. That's not a rate that indicates that the process was really doing what it needed to do to reintegrate people into the community. Now, maybe that's the best they can do, but it wasn't entirely clear that the way the parole system was working was getting us there. So we'll see. But this is one where we actually did what we said we were going to do and achieved it. I'd love to hear any comment on this. Maybe we've already talked this issue out. Seeing none, I'll move on. Again, we have had a long-term discussion, and this is something that got derailed by the pandemic, about the condition of our jail. And for new legislators, it probably would be a good thing to have a conversation with the sheriff and Ray Bunce about the jail, and maybe have Arel visit with us to talk about it. The jail is in particularly poor shape. It was commissioned, I think, in 1987. And of course, it's a 24/7 hotel. And some of the guests are not as kind to the equipment as they can be. And it gets very hard use at times. So the building and the structure really needs some work. I see Shauna has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it also might be helpful for the new legislators to be given a tour so that they can actually see the conditions.
I think that'd be great. Yes. So at any rate, this, I believe, should probably be on our list of priorities because there is capital program money that's going to be devoted to this. This is going to be a multi-year effort. Constructing a jail is a very large undertaking. We have some particular issues here in Tompkins County because we have pushed our alternatives to incarceration really, I think, pretty well. And we're probably at the numbers that optimally a county our size could hope to get to. I think we're probably not going to see numbers much lower than we are now. But when we started this enterprise, we were up near 100 as an average daily count. We're now running in the 30s, low 40s. And that is, really different from surrounding counties. It also is something that will probably create issues with the Commission on Corrections in that they have to approve any jail construction, and their math on how many beds you need is going to be based on what other counties are essentially doing around the state. So that's going to be quite a challenge, I think, to have those discussions and determine what is appropriate here. Right now, we have an 82 bed capacity. You can never fill it to that because you have within that something called classification that prevents, say, some people have to be held in solitary by themselves. Men and women have to be held differently or separately. Youth have to be held separately. And so you never optimize all 82 beds. But we have a substantial amount of unused capacity. I think if we're talking about jail construction, you always want to have some unused capacity. You don't want to be full because then you have to worry about boarding out, where you're driving people to other counties and you have the cost of paying for them to be in the other county. At the same time, I don't know that we want to build a jail that's far larger than we need. So we're going to be confronting lots of questions here, and it probably would be a priority for us going forward, but I welcome discussion. Lee.
Just to make you aware, Randy and I kind of got introduced to that topic this morning at the Facilities and Infrastructure meeting, and Mike had Rel talk a little bit about the jail needs, and I think the upshot of it was we were trying to figure out what the role of that committee may be in moving forward. So we're hearing it from both sides here today a little bit.
Yeah, I think both committees will have to have some input on this because there's impacts in both directions. I mean, it is a facility like any other county building. At the same time, the impact on the sheriff's department and all the other related agencies that deal with public safety is obvious. So it'll have to go both, I think, but I see Shauna nodding her head.
Yeah, I think it's important to include both aspects. I also think that it would be important to have some joint committee meetings as we start the conversation, because we can't do this in silos. Facilities can't do it without having input from the sheriff and the undersheriff and all the people that visit the jail on a regular basis.
Yeah. Jen.
And just wanted to add a point, because I know we mostly talk about the jail when we talk about the public safety building. I know we're mostly talking about improvements to the jail side, but I would just ask that we also take into consideration we're running out of room on this side, especially with the new civilian response unit that we are incorporating. We actually had to remove evidence out of one of our evidence rooms and are temporarily storing it in a storage shed out back to be able to give them room, an office to work out of. So I would just ask us to consider that we also need a little bit more room over here on the road patrol side as well, if that's possible.
Well, and you also have the new centralized arraignment part taking up some space. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was our one training room that we had. Luckily, Crash Fire Rescue has been great. So they allow us to use their training room when we need to, or if we need to hold a meeting where we need to be able to space out. But that's eventually, we're probably going to wear out our welcome there eventually.
Yeah. So at any rate, we accomplished nothing on this goal other than looking at it in 2021, but it's still with us and it'll be obviously there. This was a really big one in 2021, 2020 and 2021, that the governor issued Executive Order 203 that required counties to look at their criminal justice systems and their public safety systems, and to really examine them. Tompkins County and the city of Ithaca collaboratively took this very seriously. I read some of the reports from neighboring counties that were 3 pages, and we're, really, really kind of mailing it in. And, basically saying it's all fine, we don't need to do anything, and we did not do that here. We've undertaken some very significant exploration of what our current systems are and what we can do about them. We passed resolutions at the end of February last year, I believe it was, both at the city and the county level, agreeing on many different elements of our separate plans to collaborate. And Mona is one element of that. She's with us now, the Community Justice Center. But we've moved through lots and lots of elements of this, and Deanna can certainly speak in more detail to what those are to this point. But we have a long journey yet to go. I anticipate this one will continue, but we made some really significant strides going forward on this, I believe, so far. We're not there yet. Deanna, do you have anything to add?
I think you said it well. I think one thing where we are in terms of the process is the prioritizing all of the plans that were approved. They were actually approved March 30th and March 31st, respectively, and building the infrastructure for sustainability. One of the things that Jen mentioned specifically, the Tompkins County Legislature funded approximately $240,000 for 3 positions in the sheriff's office to start the Unarmed pilot program. That's one area of influence. Funding the 2 and 2.5 positions in the CJC. That also, another area is training with $40,000 in the budget for that work. A pilot program, the study for the alternative response, and another $25,000 for that. So in total, there's approximately $1.7 million that was appropriated for reimagining that needs to, that in terms of OTRs for a 3-year period that the legislature has committed to, in addition to the city of Ithaca, to do this work. And so now we're in the process of lifting these plans, operationalizing them, moving them forward. And so I guess, and I meant to say this earlier, we actually met with the sheriff's office today on some of that work. This morning had a great meeting. We actually have a positions description just about finalized to start recruiting for these sheriff's clerks for the unarmed pilot response. And so lots of good work. I won't go into details because you guys know this is one of my passion points in the work that we continue to move forward. Also, just in terms of infrastructure, Rich, you've been a significant part of the Community Justice Center Advisory Board Subcommittee, Development Committee. We're actually in the process of developing a board for this, and they've done a lot of good work. They've been meeting at 8:30 for the last 3 or 4 months, and so we anticipate that work being completed. So there's lots of work that has been done and a lot of work to be done.
And, I would just add that, and I've said this before, that if reimagining is truly successful, it's a trust building exercise that, so much of the focus, I think, has been and discussion has been about police activity, but it's more than that. It's really community relations. And that if successful, this should be really better for police as well. That if you have better trust, people who need help will call the police. And when the police show up, they will help the police. And that's really the overall goal, that within our criminal justice system, we want that increased trust. We could certainly fail in this enterprise, but if we don't achieve all our objectives, I certainly don't want it to be because we didn't try. And I think so far we've really put a good effort on this, and we're going to see more of that in 2022. So I anticipate this probably will be a continuing priority, but we're going to decide that as a committee. Anything further on this one? Okay. A couple of years ago, New York State made some very significant changes to the bail and discovery processes for people who are in the criminal justice system. And we've wanted to track that. Some of that's become complicated because of COVID. And I think that we're probably shaking through to the point we can draw some reasonable conclusions about whether it's working or not. I'm looking for Lance. Is he here still? There he is. Oh yeah, Lance and Matt, I'd love to have you guys comment briefly. Matt, in particular, you were at a meeting several weeks ago, or actually before the holiday, where we were talking about people that seem to be repeat offenders and the difficulty of actually bringing them into the system and doing anything effective. Do you think that's related to any of the bail changes?
Well, I know that part of the bail reform was changing what lower level offenses required only the issuance of an appearance ticket. That changed the ability of the police to bring an individual before a judge and start their court process, where instead now the police are only allowed to provide an appearance ticket saying, hey, would you please come to court? And often that person doesn't come to court. I think that hopefully we'll be able to include a lot of this data in the public safety dashboards I talked about earlier.
Yeah, I guess on that. If I could just follow up, Lance, when you say, please come to court, I mean, there's the ability to file for a warrant, correct?
Not really, not immediately, not until after a period of a process. You can't just file for a warrant anymore.
Okay. All right, Lance, sorry for interrupting.
Lance is going to disagree with everything I just said, so I can just cut him off.
That's his job.
If I didn't, then Lisa would be going like, why are we paying him that salary? I do disagree. I agree and disagree. It's a small number of people who don't show up. Bail reform, from my view, has not significantly impacted that change. What used to happen, let's say you had bail before, with many of these people, and many of the people we're talking about are people who have, there can be a couple categories of people. Some of them have drug or alcohol or mental health issues, or they have very poor executive functioning skills. Those are the skills, you learn in school in terms of being able to track appointments and, keep track of your appointments and making them and so forth. A lot of our clients have those contribute to the issues. But what used to happen, these people, if they get arrested, they'd come in, they get released, or they did their first court date, they'd appear, and then oftentimes they may not appear. They start missing. What happens now is they're given an appearance ticket. Some of them appear and then have the same issue. Some of them don't appear, and it takes some effort to get them in. From my perspective, it's a small number of people, and these tend to be people with low-level offenses. These are very low-level offenses. These aren't people committing violent crimes. Those people are all, for the most part, bail eligible, and they're being brought in on that. So it's not, to me, it's not a significant change in this. There are always some people who have some of these issues, and part of that is I think in terms of the overall system is adjusting, identifying some of these needs and working with them, trying to improve that. But to kind of, I guess, the core question, bail reform hasn't had a significant impact in terms of what you've read about or claims of people who would have been incarcerated before out committing new crimes or serious crimes. I would say we haven't had a serious issue with at all here.
Yeah, no, I was referring to this situation where there's some people that just repeat offend and don't on small level crimes, but this sounds like something where we need more data. We need to really review it. So it sounds like there's some open questions. We certainly did not address this in any meaningful way in 2021. So in terms of a priority, I'm not sure we got there to be able to answer these questions, but I would look to Lance and Matt to help us with that in trying to get some numbers together to really examine to see what's going on or not going on. Any further question, comment on this one? Yeah, okay. And then this one was tracking the impacts related to raise the age legislation. New York State changed the rules about 16 and 17-year-olds not being allowed to be kept in the local jails or the prisons, which is a really good thing overall. However, they then set up a remarkably cumbersome process for something called specialized secure detention, I think is the term. And there's only a few sites, and they're only in a few places in the state, and some counties have reserved beds. And so if you have a youth that does need to be held, there really isn't a mechanism to do that. And we've ended up with these youths being held at the sheriff's department, not in the jail, but essentially handcuffed to a desk, which is just absurd in that it flies in the face of what the legislation was trying to accomplish. Fortunately, it's happened very rarely here in Tompkins County. We don't have a great need for a lot of beds, but when we need one, we haven't been able to necessarily to get one. And I think we have that answer. So in terms of this is a priority, we know that. The question is there something we could do about it? This probably needs a state legislative change to either create more beds or to allow some temporary detention system that isn't as limited as what they've already or what they've set up. But again, I'm not sure there's much for this committee to do on it, and we certainly didn't in 2021 other than watch it. Lance.
I was just going to say, I think one of the issues, and Matt and everybody's had to deal with this more than assigned counsel, frankly, but watching it, one of the issues appears to me, you're talking about a lack of facilities, and there is a lack. I mean, the state didn't plan for this in that regard for this changeover very well. We have a facility that's mothballed here in Tompkins County. That's a youth facility. And there are a number of others around the state. And I think one of the problems is OCFS is saying, no, it can't be used for that. We're saving it for some undefined possible future need. So I think you're right. There needs to be some critical thinking at the state to address this, because there are facilities that could be adjusted probably fairly quickly to handle the need. But there seem to be, different state agencies in part that are like, not me, not mine, I think is part of the issue.
Yeah. Jen.
I would just ask as a temporary solution, because I don't know if it'll ever get worked out at the state level, is again, with the thinking about how to reconstruct the PSP, the jail, road patrol side, is that we possibly explore maybe adding another interview room that could potentially use to house juveniles when we need to. Right now, we put them in our only interview room back in CID. We tried to make them as comfortable as possible, bring over bedding from the jail, but it's overtime intensive because we have to have someone sit with them at all times, and sometimes this lasts 2 to 3 days while they're in our custody. But it would be nice to maybe potentially explore building another interview room that we could use. Our deputies and CID could certainly use another interview room, but it could also be used to temporarily house juveniles, and something maybe that's a little bit more comfortable, gives them something potentially to do. If we could put a TV in there that can be secured, or explore different ways to make it a little bit more comfortable if we do run into these situations.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. Matt.
This is a problem that I think probably 55 or more of the counties are dealing with, based on a recent survey that the DA's Association took of DAs across the state. Almost nobody has their own dedicated specialized secure detention beds. And so I hope that at some point, the state will realize that this is a problem that they created, that is, there's got to be a fix for. I mean, maybe, what Jen's talking about is a short-term fix, loosening up the restrictions, but also maintaining the point of the restrictions in that we're not keeping 16 and 17-year-olds in the same area as 18-plus-year-old people. That's the point of it all. But I think they were a little more restrictive than they needed to be at the state level when they added this law. But the good news is that I don't think we've had to even, and as I say this, I'm knocking on wood, find such a bed for probably close to a year, if not more.
Yeah. Okay. Henry.
Yes, Kip Kephart from DSS is also looking into a joint solution among counties. I'm not sure what the status is, but I know she was looking at it late last year. And
That's stalled. That's stalled off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Lisa.
My comments were going to be along the line of Henry's, in that Kit is actively involved, however, with OCFS, in that typically when these cases arise and a child is in custody, it's OCFS that signs on or off as to where that individual can be placed. And I know that together with other DSS commissioners, there's been conversations with OCFS about flexibility and where they can be housed in public safety and so forth. So this is another one of these goals that is an overlap with Health and Human Services, and we should be continuing that communication.
Yeah, it's really, it's fortunate that it has happened very rarely in our county. It's unfortunate that it's happened at all, but I think in other parts of the states, it's happening all the time. And it goes, as I said, it's just directly contrary to what the point of the legislation was about, which is more humane treatment, and separate treatment for these 16 and 17-year-olds to keep them out of the general population. Anyway, that was last year. Then we talked about some other things, and some of these we determined weren't quite ripe yet, and others we thought just didn't rise to the level. Marijuana legalization was early. LEAD was early, but now LEAD is set up and running. So, it's currently operating in the city, but it may well expand countywide. That might be a priority for us to look at. Same with marijuana, just to see what is really going on with it at this point, and where licenses being granted for growing, processing, and sale in the county. And the Wellness and Recovery Court, that again is something that started in the city and is now available outside of the city as well. We might want to look at that. Emergency medical services has been a long time issue, whether it's becoming, more acute or just continuing to percolate at its crisis level. We might determine that that's something we really want to take a harder look at. I think that we've seen a lot of the upgrades coming through on the emergency communication system. There's going to have to be more that's integrated into that in regard to reimagining public safety. Maybe we want to think about that in some more detail. The Traffic Safety Council has merged with the Stop DWI Committee, and that's operating. I'm not sure we need to look further at that, but just to let it run. And of course, these are 6 things. If somebody has 7, 8, 9, or 10, think about them, and we can bring them to the February meeting. Or if you think of something right now, happy to hear ideas? Okay, quiet bunch. I think we had a pretty successful 2021. Our focus really went to very specific areas like reimagining public safety, which it needed to be at. But obviously, we're going to have to reevaluate and see where we need to look in 2022. So we'll go. But what I would propose to do as chair of public safety is that I will do a draft of the priorities as I see them, and you come and tell me why I'm all wrong. and we can argue about it all and have some fun with it. So anything further on priorities from 21 review? Seeing none. Any other business to come before the Public Safety Committee? Any last words? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Shauna moves, Lee seconds. And I will take a show of hands to adjourn. All in favor? Yes, that's unanimous.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.